Chief Chris OGI, what's up?
Kenny Yada Styles. What's happening, brother?
One more time. We about
Happy Sabbath.
Happy Sabbath, man. Uh, we said we're gonna keep doing this. That's what we're doing, man. We're gonna stay true to our word and keep doing some recording and talking about uh, his lifestyle.
Okay, so part of the lifestyle is keeping the Sabbath. So this is absolutely an impromptu call. Wasn't planned, wasn't scheduled. Just Kenny called me up, said, "Hey, I want to talk about some things." So I said, obviously it's my business. We can do that. So we jumped up here on a Zoom call, and Kenny's gonna talk about some stuff that he has interest in discussing that the Lord put on his heart,
Always. Yeah. So the purpose of this discussion I want to have is to enlighten mothers, daughters, sisters, brothers, cousins, aunties, uncles, everybody in between, anybody and everybody, to get a deeper understanding and knowledge for Hebrew Israelites. What is your life? What is our disposition in our beliefs, our background, and so this is for, I guess, Christians, Muslims. What makes us different as Mosaic Hebrews, Israelites, than all the other Buddhists and all the other religions of the world, and their cultures, their beliefs versus our culture, our beliefs, and what standpoint do we come from as Mosaic Hebrew Israelites? So, I got two daughters, like I said before, that ask me questions all the time on the Sabbath. And we kind of right now are, relaxing, chilling. So I figured we'll have this conversation. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So true to form, I know you have a lot of information you want to get out of your head. True to form, I'm going to continue to do what I normally do to keep conversations moving forward, which is interrupt frequently to make sure we get to a point. So generally, when we're having discussions, if you start veering off into too deep of explanations that people probably should have a personal conversation to discuss, I'll be like, "Hey, Kenny, what's the point?"
Right.
Let's get to the point. Let's hammer it in. They can catch back with you later to get the details. So you run down a lot of topics. Let's pick one and let's build on it. What do we have? What do you want to talk about first? What are Hebrew Israelites?
Yes, sir. Our background, Hebrew Israelites. So we start by, I think that it'll be a good starting point. And you can get, like I said, help me nail it down. With Joseph, the story of Joseph and his father back in the Torah, where it was a drought. And in that drought, there was a time in which Joseph was put into a hole or a pit by his 12 brothers. And he was the special son, I guess, whatnot. And he was, taken to Egypt and Pharaoh, which he interpreted his dreams and talked about the one cow was going to eat, the skinny cow was going to eat the fat ones and not. So he predicted the 7-year famines. And the Pharaoh took him and made him part of his family. The reason why I say this starts there is because the 12 brothers moved because of the drought from their land over into Egypt. And that is how they became enslaved in Egypt, because it didn't start off as enslavement. It started off as moving to Egypt, going there to make it through the drought, the 7-year drought. And those were Hebrews. So understanding who they were as people, they were not Asians, they were not, Caucasians, they were not, whatever other races you're looking at. These were Hebrews, they were not Black. So what we want to do is make an understanding of where we get the name Hebrew for the Hebrew Bible. This is our Bible, this is our scripture. So if you want to start out with his father, he traveled the land, he lived on his land, and he had an inheritance and a heritage for his family and his 12 sons. And that was the beginning. So if you start from there, they grew in Egypt into a nation. And the second Pharaoh saw that the nation was growing stronger and bigger, and he said, let us take them as slaves and before they overcome us here in Egypt, before they overcome us. And that is where things took a left turn for the nation, the Hebrews, before they became Israelites.
Okay, so let's just recap what you said. And I think, we have to give some credence to our audience for knowing some of these biblical stories. Otherwise, they're starting from ground zero, and this and the Noah circumstance is probably gonna be helpful for them. So Joseph was the 12th son, the last son, 13th son of the 12th son of Jacob, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Brothers were jealous of him. They set him up to get taken into Egypt. He got taken into Egypt, and then he was considered to be a very wise man by the Pharaoh. Pharaoh took him into his home. He was raised as a royal. He ended up taking a leadership position, found his family, catches back up with his family, and then blesses them in the land of Egypt. Then we fast forward over many generations, that status slowly degrades down to the point where the Israelites, or the sons of Jacob, sons of Israel, are considered to be potential threats to the power structure that be, right? Which I might add, could quite possibly be correlation to what you're seeing happening here in America today. They have consistently seen us as threats. They first brought us over here, right? Used us for labor. Now we're potentially seen as threat and we're being killed in the streets. Move past that. The Egyptians then subject them to hard work and hard labor because they're concerned about the potential threat that they pose. And that's where we are, where you're starting the conversation now. So what was the point of this?
Yeah, so I want to give this history. Like I said, we got 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds that read the Bible, and when they read what they consider the Old Testament, which is our Hebrew Bible, they don't see where we fit in. I'm explaining it for children when they read the stories of the Bible, that they realize that this is our history book. This is about us. This is who we are, because they are always watching.
So we are who? Who are we?
We are Hebrews. We are the tribes that are of the Old Testament scriptures.
And what makes us Hebrews? What specifically makes us Hebrews?
Coming from the bloodline of Joseph and his father and those 12 tribes.
So specifically coming from the bloodline of Jacob.
Of Jacob.
Okay, who was proclaimed to be Israel.
Yes.
Right. But let's talk about that point, because when we talk about Hebrews, there's other Hebrews as well. Because if you recall, the term Hebrew, many people will say, came from Eber, who was either the grandfather or the father of Abraham. So Isaac was a Hebrew, Jacob was a Hebrew. Mm-hmm. And so was Isaac's brother, Jacob's brother, Esau. Esau was a Hebrew as well. So there's a whole descendancy line of Hebrews. But the distinction is that specific line that ran through Jacob were considered the chosen Hebrews.
Exactly.
The ones that Yah chose to fulfill his covenant with.
Yep.
Right?
So the bottom line is that we want to establish is we all are Hebrews. We're not black. Black is just a word of description where your shirt is black. This chair is black. It has nothing, it has no culture, no history, no understanding behind it. So the first thing I want my audience to understand is that we are Hebrews, not black. So
okay, but so that term is as abstract as the color black is, though.
Well, it has a culture, it has a beginning, it has a history in the Hebrew Bible. We have a scripture, we have a covenant.
Okay, I get it. So it allows us to identify with our past.
With our longer, or with our distant past.
Our ancient past.
Right.
Ancient to present, because it also talks about the covenants as well, that and all the things that happened in between.
Our land, our inheritance, our culture, who we are, everything is attached to being Hebrew.
Right.
That is our, inheritance. That is who we are, our disposition.
Okay, so we're Hebrews, and that Bible, that story is chronicled in the Bible, the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, which is the Hebrew history book. What else do you want us to know about that?
So now that we understand, we have that the Mosaic. So Moses. So after we come out of Egypt, we all understand the story of Moses. So that's the story of Joseph, and that basically is the beginning story. Now Yahweh hasn't introduced himself to the nation yet until he chose Moses. Now, once he chose Moses to lead the Hebrews out of Egypt.
So let's just for clarification purposes, since we've established that there's multiple ethnic Hebrew groups, because it didn't just start with Jacob. Let's just say the Israelites.
Well, this is good. They're about to become the Israelites.
Well, they were the Israelites when they were descended from Jacob. He was Israel.
Right.
So
he was Israel. They were Israelites. When the ones that followed out of Egypt went to Mount Sinai, then they had a marriage covenant with Yah, when he basically told them how to anoint them as a nation and gave them the covenant and chose them to be Israelites and Israel.
Well, they were Israelites because they were descendants of
right.
They were Israelites because they were descendants of Israel, which was Jacob. His name got changed to Israel, right?
Right.
But the covenant attached when he anointed the body of Israel after Egypt.
Sinai. Yes.
Right, Mount Sinai. Yeah.
Mount Sinai.
Okay.
Now we have an understanding of our history. Now we have an understanding of who we are. We have an understanding of our coming out of Egypt, how we got into Egypt, and how we come out of Egypt. And now you go into Leviticus, where they left Mount Sinai in order to go into the promised land. And this is where the wilderness starts and repeats for 400 years. And this is where we're Mosaic Hebrews are constantly explaining to our brothers and sisters what the wilderness is, and coming out of Egypt, what that stands for, what that means today. Okay.
You just interjected a new term.
Yep.
Mosaic Hebrews, which sounds descriptive enough to work with. So Mosaic Hebrews were the Hebrews that were subjected to the Mosaic laws, right? Is that what you're saying?
Laws that were given to Moses by the Most High, by Yahweh.
Okay, as a function of the covenant.
Yes, through the function.
Okay, so let's go with that. I like that terminology, Mosaic Hebrews. That's a good distinction, because what it does is it establishes us as Hebrews, and then it makes a distinction between Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, etc. Because you could be a Hebrew, correct me if I'm wrong, you can be in Hebrew practicing other religions, but you're not a Hebrew of the covenant unless you're practicing the Mosaic laws.
Yeah.
So Mosaic Hebrews, I think, is actually probably a more descriptive term than Hebrew Israelites.
It is. So understanding what Mosaic Hebrews covenant is and practices of obedience, our disposition of accepting this covenant, comes also, which we talked a little bit in our last meeting, comes with also a curse. So you have blessings on one hand, and you have a curse on the other hand. So you walk in your blessings, or if you disagree with your blessings, like Jonah, you fall into the ocean, and you fall into a curse, and you fall into this, you start to lose your blessings. So Yahweh has to slap you around to bring you back into understanding that you can't do it without him, that we can't exist and be blessed without his covenant as Hebrews.
Okay.
without following.
So blessing and curses. Mosaic Hebrews are subject to blessing and curses based upon the covenant.
Yep.
You follow the Mosaic laws, then you'll be blessed. If you don't follow, you'll be cursed.
Yep.
Right. And that is, so what would you consider that, just a genetic disposition, a natural law? What would that be considered?
Well, we are called to be the priest of the nations. We are called to be the people to teach the Hebraic laws and to interpret and to talk to the rest of the nations, other tribes, other races and people, to teach them about Yah, to teach them about the Hebraic laws, Mosaic laws, and bring that word. So as we fall short, so does the nation, so does the world fall short. And we've been falling short for a long, long time. And then we've also, after the second temple was overran, we've lost control and lost touch of who we were and what we followed.
Okay,
and
so
then it became, which
Yeah.
brought us out of our own mindset and our own covenant, which we don't know. And the transatlantic slave trade erased all our history.
Okay, so let's talk about that. You introduced a concept that I think a lot of people would be confused about. After the second temple was destroyed, where was the first temple?
Where was the first temple?
Yeah.
So during the 40 years in the wilderness, you had, this is the book of Leviticus, you have the Israelites had to go through a lot of trials and situations, which were dirty, pagan practices that they learned in Egypt. Okay. Now, in this whole process, it's the process that Yah wanted to use to clean his chosen children, the Hebrew Israelites, to clean us up and to make us more righteous, to make us more holy, so that he can come down and be with us and live among us and be close to us. We had to become holy. So through Leviticus, you start to read where he starts to teach us the laws of circumcision. And that is where they wanted to build a tent temple to Yah in order to become closer with him and give him a place of holy ground where we can actually worship with him and worship him together on earth. So that was the first temple. It was not a permanent temple. It was a temple that can be unfolded, let out, and the Hebrew Israelite tribes can, do their sacrifices, do their prayers, do the things that were clean and holy and righteous to the Most High, to God who was leading us.
Okay, so let me just paraphrase what you just said and make sure we clear up anything that people can misconstrue. So there were a number of laws that Yah put in place in order to make us clean so that we could be in his presence, right? There was the circumcision, which is a sanitary law for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
There was the dietary laws given to Moses about what we should and should not eat.
Your body clean. We all understand the dietary laws. Yep.
Right, and let's just to hit on those dietary laws. There's scientific reasons why those things were chosen not to eat. You don't eat a pig because it has a very simple digestive system. It cannot. It has one stomach, whereas humans have four. The pig can't even digest the toxins that it takes, so it all goes into the flesh. And then when you eat the pig, that flesh is absorbed into your flesh, which makes you unclean, right? Shrimp, shellfish, any type of shellfish, all bottom feeders. They eat the crap off the bottom of the ocean.
Unclean.
Right? So those scientific dietary laws that Yah put in place were meant to keep us clean so we could be in his presence. There's also laws that have to do with, sexual activity and then being around Yah and then what the process is to cleanse yourself.
Women while they're on their mistress.
Right. Because that's a flushing of their dirtiness.
Yep.
Right. They're cleansing themselves and you don't want to catch that as it's going out because it's being flushed and wiped away.
It's the first time these things were introduced on this earth was by Yah. He explained it to us and he taught it to us in Leviticus. A lot of laws of just keeping us clean as a nation.
all of which have scientific import. So those people who don't believe in the Old Testament and they want to talk about science and fact, all of these are scientific facts. So let's move past that. So then he said, look, number one, you got to be clean in my presence, right?
He even talked about having a shovel around the camp to take your, that's what the military gets when we out in the military patrol or whatever. You dig a hole to put your poop in away so people ain't walking through your crap or whatever.
Right.
So all that is in there. Just keeping your camp clean and your area clean where you're encamped at. So the outhouse was what he talked about in Leviticus. I mean,
got you. So it's extensive. So the first thing was, I need you to be clean to be around me, right? Yeah. The second thing was only worship at certain places, because there were other religions that would worship on top of mountains next to different types of trees, and that would be worshiping other deities. So he said, you only worship me at the places that I appoint. That way you can't go to someplace else worshiping another God, claiming you're worshiping me, because I'll tell you, I didn't tell you to do that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the first temple, which is a question which we originally started with, where is the first temple? The first temple was David first wanted to build a house for the Most High, but Yah said, no, let your son do it. So what we're talking about is the temple that Solomon built. That's the first temple in Jerusalem.
And specifically, the reason why Yah told him not to, David could.
But let's not go there yet. Right. So, but just I want you to verify we're talking about Solomon's temple was the first temple. Yeah. It was built in Jerusalem after the Mosaic Hebrews, after the Mosaic Hebrews had been well settled and established in the land with all of, and were the wealthiest nation on the planet. Yeah. At that point in time. Solomon built the Most High temple in Jerusalem, right? But now go ahead with what you were going to articulate.
So the second temple, now that it's built, there were some specific laws that were given to the priest.
The first temple or the second temple?
The second temple.
So now we're talking, so we talked about the first temple, which was Solomon's. So now you jump to the second. Where did the second come about? What happened to the first one? And where was the second one?
So the first one was, I don't know. I can't remember that. I think it was the tent.
Solomon's temple was the first one.
It's a tent. It was to be taken up, torn down, and moved. It was mobile.
Solomon's temple was the first temple.
A more permanent temple on the land, and where we resided. So there became so he said, you have to sanctify the ground and create a permanent temple to me in this particular spot. And he gave them the exact measurements of everything that they needed for this temple, from top to bottom, just from the foundation to the roof to the entrance, everything where they do their sacrifices. And the 12 tribes had an understanding of what they had to do. And then separate from that, you had which wasn't actually a tribe, but the priesthood, which had
hold on a second, Kenny. This is why I wanted us to be clear on what we're referring to as the first temple. So you're referring to the first temple which is the tent of meeting was the first temple that you're referring to.
Okay.
That was the mobile structure that they used when they were traveling through the wilderness for 40 years, right? So, and that's the problem. We commonly have these discussions, and somebody will characterize this as the first temple, somebody else characterize that as the first temple. So we're having different conversations using same terminology, so people get confused.
Conversations, yeah.
Right. So right now, let's go back before we get lost talking about different things. You're saying that the tent, which is fine. You're saying that the tent of meeting, that the structure that was mobile, that the Israelites had when they were traveling through the wilderness, that's what you're referring to as the first temple.
Yes.
Okay. So all right. So that's fine. So this is not Solomon's temple, folks, that we were talking about, that we have previously referenced. This is the mobile structure that traveled the Israelites, that Moses and the priest used in order to commune with the Most High. during our time in the wilderness. And also past that, up until the time that the Solomon's temple was built.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, Kenny.
No, that's good. So after the second temple was built, there was really no need for the mobile temple unless you're traveling or doing whatnot. But the second temple, you'll start to read. This is where we had this temple. People don't understand that it was there for a long time.
Which one? The second one?
The second temple stood for a long time.
Uh-huh.
And if you read, Yahweh himself came to the door of the temple often, and he resided in the temple and talked with the Hebrews.
The Mosaic Hebrews?
The Mosaic Hebrews. So Yahweh would come down to the door of the temple and talk with his people and convene in covenant with us on a regular basis. So we had a leader in the temple. The Most High himself resided there on a regular basis because it was a clean nation. It was pure. They obeyed Yahweh. They didn't steal from other nations and take idols and all their ideas and things like that. Yah had his own group of people that obeyed him and worshiped him only directly. That was what the Hebrew Israelites were, and that's what we did. Until, which it was predicted, when Moses passed, Aaron passed, and the fourth and fifth and sixth generation Hebrew Israelites started to stray and deal with some of the nations that we were conquering at the time. They started to bring in the women and marry the women of these other nations. Now, understand, these Hebrew Israelite boys were out conquering, young, third, fourth generation. They were rich, they were prosperous, they had everything they needed. Yah provided everything, and they were spoiled. We became spoiled as a nation. And this is where Yahweh warned us that you're supposed to continue to teach the inheritance, talk, and fear Yah. Or else you start to get a mindset of someone else and bring that into your camp. And then you start to drift away from your blessings, and the curses start to come in to the camp of Israel and the Hebrews. And then once you have that, then Yah has to leave. So Yah in Ezekiel, he told Ezekiel, read Ezekiel. He said, go look at what Israel is doing. Look at how they are worshiping these other gods and how I'm jealous, I'm mad, I'm upset. And if I leave, they're going to be conquered. So this is where Ezekiel the prophet and the books of the prophets start to talk to the spoiled Hebrew Israelites who were blessed by Yah for all those generations. So you can imagine a rich kingdom having children, and these children having children that were all wealthy, not really knowing famine, not really knowing poor or unwealthy. So what they became is they started to go out, sleep with other women, bring those other women in. Those other women started to worship idols. They started to look at those idols and allow slowly and surely more and more of this Egyptian and other cultures into our camp. And our camp got worse and worse and weaker, and then it divided. But yeah, so that's where we can talk about that.
Well, I don't know there's much to talk about. I think it was a pretty succinct story. So
this is our history. This is our history.
Right. So basically, we did not follow Mosaic. Well, we tried to follow Mosaic laws, but we allowed other cultural practices to creep into our daily activities to the point where it became offensive to Yah. And he abandoned his temple. And when he abandoned his temple, he abandoned the Israelites, I mean, the Mosaic Hebrews altogether. And he turned his back on them, and he allowed the other nations to have their way with him, a lot of which he brought upon us. Like he pushed other nations to come down and take us into captivity.
This is where you read in Daniel and in Isaiah, in Daniel and Isaiah. And this is why I don't have, y'all got to read your own Bible for yourself. You know, I want people to read the Bible for themselves. I don't have to pull out those scriptures and start pulling it up because y'all going to see it. So read Daniel and Isaiah. And, you know, the prophecy talks about, you know, the abomination that makes desolate. They have 70 years to make right with the covenant. After that.
What is the abomination that made desolate?
So if you read the you know, I'm not going to read it verbatim and whatnot. So I'll kind of paraphrase.
Okay, please do.
You know, the beginning with the temple and with the Israelites, you know, and the prophets, and the ending is the false prophet, the abomination that makes desolate.
What is the abomination that makes desolate?
So the abomination that makes desolate is when they desecrated the temple and then they replaced it with an abominable lifestyle,
Okay.
and an abominable covenant, new covenant. So it's that New Testament. It's the that keeps us cursed, that keeps us out of rebuilding Yah's nation.
Okay, so let me be clear on what you're articulating, which is, you know, same thing I would probably articulate. But what you're saying is that Daniel prophesies that there's going to be an abomination that is going to cause the desolation of Israel, or of Israel, right? And that abomination is going to end the daily sacrifices, right?
Yep.
End the daily sacrifices that happened on a regular and consistent basis to atone for the sins of the Israelites. So they're going to quit paying homage to the Most High for the things that they do in violation of Mosaic law, right? And then, so that shifting from Mosaic law and rituals and practices, right, to something else. And we're just saying that something else is the New Testament.
New Testament.
Because the New Testament, because the New Testament says, forget about following the Mosaic law.
Yeah.
Right. It ends the daily sacrifice.
Yep. It's replaced by, you know.
Replaced by no, you know me.
It's replaced by Jesus Christ Superstar. That's what I always call him. I call him Jesus Christ Superstar.
All right. That's not, you know, this.
Everything points to him. All roads point to him nowadays. So this is the reason why I'm teaching my children and my kids, because it's everywhere.
Okay, but let's agree to talk clearly and plainly about what we believe.
Yeah.
It's replaced the abomination that makes desolate, that ends the daily sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
That abomination was Christianity. But he was the sacrificial lamb that replaced the daily sacrifice.
Right.
And that is the abomination that caused our desolation.
Christianity as brought in by Paul, as taught by Paul.
Okay, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Whoa, stop. Yeah. Christianity or Christianity as taught by Paul? Which one is it?
Christianity is following Christ.
Okay, so it's not.
Let me just.
No, I need you. I'm asking you a simple question.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
What caused it? Is it Christianity or a specific sect of Christianity that did it?
Christianity is Catholicism. There is Christianity.
Can you answer my question? Yada Styles, can you answer my question? Mm-hmm. What caused it? Christianity or Christianity taught by Paul? Because one answer is, if you say it's Christianity, then it's all of Christianity. If you say it's Christianity taught by Paul, then you're saying that there's some sect of Christianity that works.
No, there is no sect of Christianity or Catholicism or any idol worship that works.
Works for who?
That works for us as Hebrew Israelites, or anybody, or any man, anybody who wants to know the Most High.
Okay, so, but okay, so right. So we agree that Christianity is the problem. It's a problem. One of the problems.
The mentality of shaping the nation's mindsets to get back to what I'm trying to help people to see and get back to. I have to use a certain type of language to get people's vernacular.
What language do you have to use? English works.
They have to understand. I'm talking about a certain words to not offend.
What?
Get offended. They, oh, I can't hear this. I got to turn this off.
Then let them turn it off.
Truth. So you got to take time with them. You got to take time with babies. You got to take time. And I want them to understand.
These aren't babies. These are delusional grown ass people. These ain't babies. You would see what the problem is that when you try to
pacify,
you try to placate their current sensibilities, they never get the reality of what you're saying.
But
if you're splitting hairs, they can interpret something you're saying to mean, oh, yeah, that's exactly what I said, except you did your hand movement like this.
Right.
No, Christianity does not work for us.
Absolutely
right?
not.
Now it works for them because this is the same thing that happened with Balaam and Peor when he went to the king of the Midianites. Right? He said, look, I can't curse them, but you can get them to curse themselves by doing things they're not supposed to do.
Yep.
Have a festival. Israelites will come and they'll engage in your sexual religious practices of your gods. And then the Most High will get mad at them and he'll curse them.
Yep.
This is the same thing. He says, first commandment, put no God before me. So the king of Christianity says, oh, let's put Jesus in front of him and tell them that he's going to sacrifice himself so that they don't have to do daily sacrifices anymore.
They can't get to God without Jesus.
So now you put somebody before him, you violated commandment number 1,
Which caused you.
And you fulfilled the prophecy in Daniel saying that the beginning of the desolation, the abomination that causes the desolation will be the end of the daily sacrifice. You've just proved that out. You fulfilled it.
They don't even recognize that or realize it.
Right. Because they're delusional, because you're not speaking English to them. You're trying to make them feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
So you're taking somebody who's overweight, unhealthy, and say, hey, look, your living practices are okay. Keep eating sugar all day.
No. Here's the thing. I think that
sugar ain't that bad.
Most Hebrews, now that they understand and call themselves Hebrews, and I pray that we do, stop calling yourselves black. We are Hebrew. So most Hebrews want to know the Most High. They want to know Yahweh. They want to be obedient. They want to obey. But they think that they have to do it a certain way.
And they do.
Since babies.
And they do have to do it a certain way.
They think it's through the New Testament. That's not the right way.
It's not.
The New Testament is not our book. It's never been our book. And we've never read from that book. It was not part of our covenant. It was not part of our establishment. So when they try to put that book first, that is the abomination that makes desolate. And what the desolation is they don't want to follow Yahweh. The words of Paul, and which is what they're going to quote to try to defend the New Testament, the books of Paul, he has zero authority over Mosaic law and over the Hebrew Israelites in our history book. So you cannot bring the New Testament and Paul's scriptures, or they ain't even scriptures, his letters and his discussions into a conversation with any Hebrew Israelite or us, because we don't even recognize it.
Okay.
So that's the first thing.
Yeah, let's be clear on something though, because you made a statement.
Yeah.
And you said something about the desolation is our people, and I think it was probably just a blending in of thoughts, our people not wanting to follow the Most High. The desolation was a specific desolation of the land.
In the temple.
And the temple, of the land. Yeah. Reducing it to complete destruction, complete emptiness. Sad. Right? That was the desolation that was brought about. Right? Yep. Punishment for our disobedience was what we've been through over the last 2,600 years. Mm-hmm. Right? He promised us. He said, if you do not obey, I will kill your kids, rape your wives, put you into labor and servitude to other people, take you into bondage by ships. He promised, he said, challenge me, Negro. Yeah. I will make you forget your history. I will wipe away your recognition of who you are. You will not know who you are.
And who did he use to do that?
Tell me.
He used other nations. He
That's
used
right.
other nations. These are the nations that are in power now, which it created the Roman Catholic Church, which created their Bible, which created their word. Why would we follow that? Why would we follow the Bible and the scriptures of the people who conquered the Hebrew Israelites and desecrated the temple. That is slavery. What is that called when the person is taken into is captured by the enemy and they start to fall in love with the enemy or follow the person who called them? It's a certain term.
Stockholm syndrome.
Stockholm syndrome. We have in our community, in the Hebrew community, we have Stockholm syndrome to Egypt. All Egypts in America, United States.
Well, when you say Egypt, because America. Egypt has been relegated to a lowly country, but he brought other nations against us other than Egypt. Egypt was symbolic of captivity and bondage. He brought Assyria against us. He brought Babylon. He brought nations from far away whose languages we don't speak, never heard of, and never seen before. Against us. And he created this ecosystem, this perfect environment of behaviors, attitudes, dispositions, natural conditions like currents, wind tides, right? To bring about all of this, to bring us into our punishment, right? When you think about what paths do thunderstorms travel, like hurricanes, you see they come off the coast of Africa. That undercurrent was meant for us to bring those ships into the places and the ports they were supposed to be. It enabled it. You couldn't go the other way, right? So, you know, the disposition of European nations was created in order to effectuate our punishment, right? The lack of resources on their land, right? The overall general nutritional disposition of Europeans put them in a very aggravated state, right? The lack of resources causes them to explore, right? That exploratory culture and the need for labor causes them to pick us up, right? Their nutritional deficiencies or disposition causes them to perceive us a certain way, right? So he put all of these things into effect in order to bring about what he said he was going to do. Right?
That's all in the physical. That's all in the physical. That's all in the tangible. That's all in a reality of a timeline, a time frame. And if you go back and talk, and you know, just to go into a study to bring into another part of the conversation is the Book of Enoch. You know, you have also fallen angels that play a role.
Let's hold on. Before we go there, let me shift, because that Book of Enoch deserves a conversation
all to its own.
All to its own.
Right.
So let's not even touch on that yet. But
okay.
Let me ask you this. Let's get to some real world questions based upon the history we just talked about, right? Joseph, Israelites, Mosaic Hebrews, getting into the land, being established, being the richest nation on the planet, following Mosaic laws, then getting to a point where we're violating them so egregiously that Yah leaves his temple, abandons us, inflicts us with the curses he promised to afflict us with.
Before he leaves, he sends prophet after prophet after prophet to tell.
Right. So he does all that, right?
Yep.
Subjects to our punishment, changes the disposition of other nations to make them come and effectuate his will, and take us into captivity, right? But all of this started.
That's a spiritual change, because
what does that mean? People keep talking the spiritual talk.
We're not as intelligent, as powerful, and as strong as we as Hebrew Israelites really believe. We were more stronger, intelligent, and powerful. It's in the spiritual, they were given the knowledge of making steel and metal and things by fallen angels. They were taught all these things that they that they learned before they came to shipbuilding and all that, and mastery of metal and stuff like that through fallen angels. Before their time, they were given this knowledge, and they basically used that knowledge against us, and that's why that's part of the curse. They didn't just all of a sudden, you know, these Europeans become so powerful and strong all on their own.
Right, but let's be clear.
And conquer us all on their own.
Let's be clear, right? Gunpowder existed and was in use in Africa, or what I would characterize as Yadugu, prior to the emergence of the Europeans. all of those substances existed. They just weren't used for the same means.
Right.
Gunpowder wasn't used to propel bullets out of machines to kill people, right? But gunpowder existed and was in use. We used different purposes. So in reality, it's not a spiritual. Their disposition was put into place in such a way that they didn't come over here and spiritually take us. They physically took us.
Mm-hmm.
Physically, they got in boats, rowed up over here, set sails, came up on the land, bang, 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 captain, put chains around our necks and dragged us into a ship. We got dances after that now, right? But anyway, they did all of that physically.
Yeah.
Right? But that's Yah basically changing their environment, altering their environment and it takes decades, hundreds of years for that change to effectuate itself. So he puts in play the change in the nutritional diets. He puts in place the change of the resources the land can produce, and the number of people can produce it for, to put them in a position where they have to go out and explore and conquer. Right? He brings all of those things into existence over time, which ultimately culminate in effectuating his will to bring us into captivity.
And all these nations were named nation by nation. They were all prophesied.
All prophesied. He told you he was going to do it. He didn't say how I'm going to do it, but I bring the rain, right? And I take it away. I bring the wind and I take it away, right? I cause your crops to grow and I cause them to fail.
Yep.
So he's telling you, look, I can flip any switch I want. And when I flip that switch, it's going to change the whole dynamics of your world. So understand, I am the source of all authority. But move that aside. The cause of this, the root cause of us going into captivity was what?
Idol worship.
Okay. And idol worship is disobedience.
Disobedience.
Right. So the root cause of us going to captivity is disobedience. Now, let me ask you a present day question. Do we deserve reparations for something that was our fault?
No. It's our fault. It's still our fault. It's our mentality.
Okay, so let me say this again. Let me ask you this question more precisely. You're saying that slavery is our fault.
I'm saying slavery,
and don't sugarcoat your words,
is a curse of disobedience that Yahweh predicted to our ancestors, and our ancestors failed to continue to observe and understand the Torah and Yah's power and his nature. So it became our curse. We cursed ourselves.
Okay. So slavery is a punishment for disobedience.
Yes.
Okay. So it's the same thing as the sentencing when you've been convicted of a crime.
Still is today.
Right. So, okay. So when you're convicted of a crime, do you get mad at the warden of the jail for putting you in jail?
His job. He doing his job.
Right.
Yep.
So again, don't do the crime if you don't want to do the time.
Yeah.
We continue to do the crime of disobedience. The only thing we have to do to change our disposition in this society and the world is to be obedient, right?
Being obedient, changing our mentality, our mindset to be obedient and to start being holy according to Torah and the Tanakh, the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, Mosaic law. Once we become obedient as a nation under that, which is all good, which is all reality, which is all tangible. It's not based on faith, it's based on action. Once we become that, then our blessings it's unstoppable. We got Yah on our side, we elevate. Mm-hmm. That's what being a Hebrew Israelite is.
So why is it that we can't get that through to our people? Why are we having such big challenges doing
that? Makes desolate. Because I mean seriously, because the way it's taught into our community, if you drive around one street in a Black neighborhood, you're gonna find 18 churches. You're gonna find churches on every block. You're gonna have teaching and they're preaching New Testament, which is our abomination, which is our desolation. We're held down through the ministry of the Roman Catholic Church, through the New Testament, through the belief that Jesus is going to miraculously save us when it's never going to happen. That's not what it's meant to be. That's not what it's meant to do. It's all interpreted wrong. And it took me a long time to come out of it and to understand the spiritual side as well as the physical and natural side. And that's what I want my brothers and sisters to do that are here as practicing and believing Christians, to start to come over and start to understand that, to come out of Christianity, come over into becoming Hebrew Israelites as a disposition and as a covenant and a promise to the Most High and Yahweh.
Okay, see, but again, and it's not a but again, because I agree with everything that you're saying. I just want to make sure that we're using terminology that doesn't mix the conversation. So when you say, it's not enough to be a Hebrew Israelite, right? It's not enough.
I understand, right? They got to understand that, right?
Yeah, because that's a genetic disposition. That is just your DNA. You can't change that.
Yeah.
Right. What you have to do as a Hebrew Israelite is you have to commit to the covenant. Yeah. Like you have to commit to being obedient in the covenant. And that's when we talk about what is Yah life.
Commandments, all based in the Hebrew.
Say that again, start again, because you cut something.
The laws, the statutes, and commandments that are all spelled out, I's and T's crossed and dotted, right in the Hebrew Bible only.
Correct.
The New Testament only Hebrew Bible.
Correct. So when we talk about what is Yah life, I mean, that's it in a T. That is the nation of Hebrew Israelites, the genetic DNA Hebrew Israelites that have decided to obey the covenant, to obey the commandments and laws and the statutes. That is what Yah life is. If you are a Yahdaim, you are a child of God who has subscribed and fully committed to the covenant. Yeah. That's it, right? And there has to be a distinction between a Hebrew Israelite and someone who has subscribed to the covenant. And that's what Yah life is it makes that distinction. You can be a Hebrew Israelite, but you're not a part of Yah's nation unless you subscribe to the covenant. So go ahead and make that commitment.
Accept the covenant.
Right? Go ahead and make that commitment. Otherwise, you're forever bound to be cursed. It'll never change for you.
Brothers and sisters are. Many are lost. Many of our brothers and sisters are lost to the curse. And that's going to be to the end.
Yeah.
There's not going to be a lot of Hebrew Israelites or obedient Mosaic Hebrews that make it. So that's a whole another conversation, as in 2021, our mission, our goals, our practices as a nation or as a people, we're the remnant. That's what we are. We are the remnant that are coming back, that Yahweh called.
There's a big remnant.
Way back then.
There's a big remnant now. I mean, you're talking about close to 1 billion people worldwide.
Yeah.
You're not talking about just African Americans. You're talking about Afro-Colombians, Afro-Cubans, Afro-Brazilians. You're talking about close to 1 billion people.
In the Christian church and Catholic church, numbers have been falling big time.
What does that got to do anything?
They're leaving. They're leaving.
Who's they?
I'm sorry?
Who's they?
I would say many of our people that are, our grandmothers and mothers that raised us as Christians, we're starting to see that Christianity is not the way.
Okay, but that doesn't change anything, right?
It doesn't.
The things that we're talking about are still fringe conversations. These are still conversations held by a very small few in every major city across the country or across the world. These are fringe conversations. And the conversation that we're having right now, 98% of the Hebrew Israelite camps out there would disagree with us in some area or another.
But yeah, I don't know where they get the information or why they got that information. But
right.
Yeah.
So let's just push aside the fact that people are leaving. Nobody cares. We don't care if they're leaving if they're not coming here.
Well, that's my point. That's the next step is for them to. They're going to want to grab hold to something. That's where I'm getting at. So the first thing that happened in my life is I had to leave and stop going to Sunday school and Sunday churches and raising my kids on Sundays, which is a pagan day of worship. And then I had to start to study and learn for myself so that I can get the conviction to learn to be obedient to the Most High only, directly. And that's what I'm saying. So most people are, a lot of people are realizing that the truth is not in the church. It's not.
But let's be clear on something. And because I've walked with you through part of your journey, right? You didn't leave first until after you were convinced as a man that this is the best direction for you and your family to go.
Yeah.
So the first thing is to do is not to leave, right? That's not the first thing. You can say it is, but people leave and then they start believing that, we were the original Americans, or that, we're Egyptian now, right? They start believing all this. They just graft onto something else. And then you have to go through that whole process of letting them work through that next belief that they adopted to realize it's not about anything, right? So we got to meet people where they're at. We got to catch them on the street and be like, not literally on the street, because I'm going to go on the street, but we got to meet people where they're at. We got to have conversations with people that don't necessarily believe what we believe, but show them the delusional nature that they have to adopt in order to be able to subscribe to these belief systems.
Right. And I'm not out there trying to argue with teacher, minister, to nobody, but my family, my kids. Now,
and that's where it starts.
People come to me with questions and want to ask and try to convince me or convert me or make me understand something. They end up learning more from me, from the wisdom that I have, that I've gotten by just reading the scriptures of the Torah and the Tanakh. That's where I get my wisdom. That's where I get my knowledge for my family and for the people that need help, that come to me for wisdom and knowledge on life. I get it straight out of Tanakh, straight out of Torah, straight out of obedience to the Most High. And that's all we need. That's all we need. All that extra fear, all that extra, you're a sinner forever, you're this and this and that, and all these things that's been taught and put into the platform of our society, of our people, as a curse, as stumbling blocks. So what you do is you want to dispel all these stumbling blocks out the way and just say, get rid of them, get rid of them, get rid of them. Our people constantly running back and forth through these stumbling blocks in the wilderness all the time and having these conversations that are keeping them away from the Most High and away from the covenant. And what you're saying is, stop looking at all these stumbling blocks, stop trying to fight over all these issues and all these things, and just start to walk in obedience to Yah, and everything else ends. So that's the way they have to, some people have to have that same mentality, and come that direction, And
I would say is, yes, certainly stop looking at these stumbling blocks. But more importantly, look at yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And ask yourself the critical questions, right? Are the things that I'm doing producing the results that I'm doing them for, right? And then if the answer to that is yes, then maybe you should just keep doing it. Either your standards are too low, or you should keep doing what you're doing, and you'll get to where you eventually want to go. But I can guarantee you that 100%, 99.9%, there's a select 0.1% that get to live in an elevated position in this world, in this societal realm right now. But they still don't know what success is, because Yah has a different definition of success, right? Israelites wanted for nothing, right? So I would say, ask yourself those questions. If it gets you there, then cool. If it doesn't, then either you have to acknowledge that, look, I don't know, so I need someone to tell me. Which is
okay.
Right, but you know who that someone is, right? It's someone who tells you that, hey, look, the Hebrew Bible tells you from cover to cover, just the Hebrew Bible, not the stapled part that's the New Testament. The Hebrew Bible tells you from cover to cover, This is what you have to do to achieve success, prosperity, wealth, and protection. This is what you have to do. And none of the things it tells you to do are to your detriment.
Nothing.
Nothing. Eat good, right? Treat my family and my brothers a certain way, right? Don't destroy another man's relationships, right? None of those things are derogatory.
Mother, your father.
Honor them, yeah. None of these things.
Don't steal, don't kill.
None of these things are derogatory. So why is it that you can't take a book that is supposedly inspired and came out of the mouth of Yah, from his mouth to Moses' ears, right? Why can't you follow this? Give it a year. If in 12 months, your life is not substantively better, I'll reimburse you for all your costs, right? Wherever it costs you to do the things that I said to do, according to the Hebrew Bible, if after 12 months, your life is not substantially better.
Health, mental, everything,
Financial,
physical,
family,
spiritual, your household. Yah covers everything. Everything is protected.
12 months. Do it for 12 months. And if you can tell me that you're not better off than you were 12 months ago or any other point in your life,
yeah,
whatever it is, whatever your costs were,
yeah,
I'll reimburse.
Yeah. So, I mean, in a nutshell, you know, that's being a Hebrew Israelite, and we can basically stop right there on the conversation. I love where we are.
In a nutshell, what's being a Hebrew Israelite? We said a lot. So just sum it up for me.
Obeying Yahweh and trusting in the Most High, one God, and only one God, and His covenant. And most, what I was going to get to was, most people don't know which questions to ask. They don't know. I was blessed to be able to ask the right questions that got me here. The people don't know history. Our history has been erased. So there's a lot of small pieces to the puzzle that create questions and new questions for us as Hebrews, as people, that keep throwing us off because they're like, well, what about this that happened? Well, what about that happened? And once you get all tangled in this circle that we call a continual circle that keeps dragging you back out there, you never get out of that cycle. You have to grab hold to the Tanakh. You have to grab hold to the Torah. And all of this, it's teachings, and make that your foundation. Once you grab hold to it and you make that your foundation, you'll start to, all the rest of it will start to erode. All those questions will start to answer themselves. And you'll say, why did I ever think that? Why did I ever believe that? And that's what the path that Chris, Chief OGI, is trying to get us to understand, is first learn the Torah, understand your obedience, understand the laws, understand the statutes and covenants, that you can do them, that they are easy to do. All right.
And even,
yeah, go ahead.
I got you. And I agree with everything you said. I want to clean up some stuff you had said earlier before it escapes me.
Yep.
So first of all, being a Hebrew Israelite is simply being from the stock of Jacob.
Yep.
And the stock of those descendant of the African slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade. That's being a Hebrew Israelite, right? Being in line with the covenant is being a Yadin at this point in time. With the covenant in its purest form, in the way that it was intended to be, is being a Yadin, which is a citizen of Yah life, right? So those are. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The original covenant and the only covenant. There is no other covenant. So when we say the covenant, we're talking about the original covenant at Mount Sinai. Read the Hebrew Bible only. There's only one covenant. There's only one original covenant that's last to the end of days, meaning to the end of time. Once time ends, that's when the covenant ends.
Right. There were some alterations to it in the Hebrew Bible. For example, I'm going to write a new covenant. I'm going to write it in your heart, not in the books. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some minor modifications to it. But yeah, definitely read the covenant. But more importantly, get in a community that espouses those principles and enforces those laws, because there's no better way to learn than through experience and interaction with your brethren. right? And that's what Yah Life is. It is that community that allows you to follow the covenant consistently and on a regular basis with people who are around you, who are concerned about your welfare, physical, mental, and spiritual, will continually guide and correct you. In this world, we don't have enough judgment going on, right? And we judge about the wrong things, too fat, too skinny. Who gives a, you're unhealthy is what we should be arguing about. Whether you're too fat or too skinny is an objective perceptive measure. Whether you're unhealthy is the thing that gets you killed, things that you die from, causes cancer.
Unclean. Your spirit is unclean. Your mind is unclean.
Right. So we focus on the things that matter, right? You're unhealthy because you're not following the dietary laws. It is an absolute fact that if you follow the dietary laws, you will be healthy. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. If you don't follow them, you may or may not be healthy, right? And you most likely won't. But 100%, if you follow them, you will be healthy. Yeah. You talk about wanting eternal life. This is the cost of eternal life. Eternal life is following dietary laws. Eating this from the day that you were born to the day that you never died. You want to live 700 years or 900 years like Moses? I'm sorry, not like Moses, but like Noah. Things you got to do. Right.
And we'll get back to it. We'll get back to it. We'll start living longer. We'll start being more healthy. It's just the way things work. We're going back to righteousness, back into our holiness and our calling, our original calling and our original purpose as priests to all nations. So I'm Kenny Yada, and his chief Chris Ojiya. And Chris, you said everything you had to say. We can continue, but I just want to try to end this segment.
My brother Kenny, I'd like to thank you for being an impetus for this call. You woke me up out of my Sabbath slumber and said, "Hey, we got something to talk about today." I appreciate you, brother, for pushing the envelope on that and making it happen. This is not work, right? This is not work. This is what we have to do when these conversations come to the forefront, is record them, have a discussion about them.
I'm a family man, and one of the things is my daughters and my wife and my family are learning. So these recordings are something that I use as teaching tools to my family and my children. I want to leave this legacy behind for them, and I want other Hebrews, now that you understand and start to come and understand, you can ask questions and leave questions in the post. We'll answer most of them, but with your family members, share this video. And that's all we ask. Share it and learn from it and ask questions. And we'll grow as a nation.
Kenny Yada Styles. Appreciate you, my brother.
Yes, sir.
Hallelujah.
Shabbat shalom. Peace.